I never meant to overhear anything. I was only trying to grab the pen I had dropped outside the study door during our engagement gala. The hallway was dim, glowing with soft gold from the sconces, and the music and laughter from the ballroom carried faintly through the marble floors. I bent down to pick up the pen, and that was when I froze. Elias's voice drifted through the cracked door calm and controlled the voice of a man used to winning. Victor Hale will be gone by next quarter. The accident is already scheduled. My father's name. His death. Mentioned like a business deadline. My pulse stopped. I moved closer, unable to stop myself barely breathing as a second voice on a muted video call responded. The transition must be clean. Share control assets, all of it. No mistakes. Elias answered smoothly. There will not be mistakes. Marina will sign the full succession package once the wedding is done. Keep pressure off the board. My wedding, my inheritance, my father's life. All woven into a plan I was never supposed to hear. My hand trembled, and the pen slipped from my grip, clattering against the marble. Elias went silent. A chair scraped the floor. Footsteps approached the door. My breath vanished. I backed away so fast I nearly tripped, and then I ran. I sprinted down the hall, past portraits of Hale ancestors, past floral arrangements taller than I was, past the soft glow of candles lining the event space. My heart pounded against my ribs as though trying to leap out of my chest. I did not stop until I reached the terrace overlooking the ocean. The wind stung my eyes, but I forced myself to breathe. I had just heard the man I was about to marry plotting my father's murder. My father trusted him. Our board trusted him. I had smiled beside him for months, ignorant blind. I rushed to find my father pulling him away from a conversation with reporters. Dad, I need to talk to you. Right now. He followed me into a quiet hallway, concern etched across his face. Marina, what is it? You look like you saw a ghost. I heard Elias, I whispered. He was talking about you, about killing you. He said the accident is scheduled. I told him everything, words falling out of me too fast, my voice cracking with panic. When I finished, he exhaled long and slow, then shook his head. Sweetheart, you are stressed. It is 2 days before your wedding. People get overwhelmed. Dad, I am not overwhelmed. I heard him. He was on a call with someone. They were planning your death. His expression hardened, not with fear, but with irritation. Elias is one of the smartest partners we have. He has supported this family more than anyone. Do not let nerves twist your perception. The disbelief hit me harder than the words themselves. He did not believe me. He thought I was being emotional, irrational. He thought I was the problem, not the man planning to kill him. Before I could argue, he signaled to 2 security guards nearby. Stay with Miss Hale for the rest of the evening. The guards stepped closer. Their posture told me everything. They were not protecting me. They were monitoring me, holding me in place, containing me. Back in the ballroom, the chandeliers sparkled, the champagne tower shone, and cameras flashed every few seconds. Guests laughed and toasted to the perfect couple. And across the room, Elias appeared. His eyes found mine. His smile was smooth, charming, and suddenly terrifying. A smile of a man who believed everything was under control. A smile of a man who had just decided my father's fate. Cold dread spread through me. I could not breathe. The walls felt tighter. The music felt distant. Every instinct inside me screamed that if I married him, I would not survive the year. So, I made a decision. I was done being watched, done being dismissed, done pretending. I moved through the crowd with a calmness I did not feel slipping toward the service corridor where staff carried trays of dishes. No one looked at me. No one questioned a woman in a catering jacket once I grabbed one from a laundry rack. I tied my hair into a messy bun, smudged my makeup to dull the luxury, and hid my earrings in my pocket. I became someone invisible. Someone forgettable. Someone who could walk out the back door of a multi-million-dollar mansion without a single camera noticing. I slipped past 2 valets arguing over keys and ducked into the shadows of the driveway. The night air was cold against my neck, but freedom brushed my skin like the first breath after drowning. I hurried down the hill away from the glittering lights, away from the lies, away from the man planning to kill my father. I had no plan, no money, no allies. Only truth, only fear, only instinct. Run. So I ran. And as the sound of the ocean faded behind me, one final thought echoed through my mind. I did not know if I would die in the desert that night, or if someone unexpected would save me. I only knew that if I stayed, Elias Vaughn would make sure I never saw another sunrise. The night air clung to my skin as I reached the edge of the estate, my breath uneven, my thoughts racing so fast they barely formed. I kept expecting a guard to shout my name, to grab my arm, to drag me back inside the mansion where Elias waited with that practiced smile. But no one stopped me. No one noticed the woman in a catering jacket and messy hair slipping out of the most extravagant engagement party of the year. I walked fast until walking no longer felt safe. Then I began to run again down the sloping road that led away from the ocean cliffs. My heels were gone. I had kicked them off somewhere in the gardens. The gravel bit into my feet, but the sting meant I was still moving, still alive, still free for one more minute. Every breath tasted like panic. Every shadow looked like Elias's men. I reached the service road where food trucks and vendor vans had parked earlier. Most were gone, but a handful remained, their engines silent, their drivers finishing their cleanup before heading home. I scanned the area quickly, searching for something. Anything. A vehicle I could hide in. One truck sat farther away from the others, a white rental truck with no Hale Dynasty logo. No tracking. No corporate oversight. The driver stood beside it, smoking and scrolling through his phone, bored and unaware of the storm unraveling inside the mansion behind him. I approached him, keeping my head down. "Excuse me?" I whispered, my voice shaking. "Is this truck headed into the city?" He barely glanced at me. "No. Heading inland. Reno warehouse. Reno. Desert. Distance. Perfect. I really need a ride," I said. "Just a short one. To the first town. Please." He exhaled smoke. "Company doesn't let riders." "I understand," I said, forcing a desperate smile. "I'll just sit in the back. You won't even know I'm there." His eyes flicked over my catering jacket. "You from the party kitchen crew," I lied smoothly. "I just need to get out before someone starts yelling at me." He rolled his eyes like he had heard too many workplace complaints in his life and did not want to hear mine. "Fine. Whatever. Just stay quiet." He unlocked the back latch and I slipped inside. The metal smelled like cardboard and dust. Boxes lined the walls. I found a small space between crates of linens and sat on the floor, hugging my knees. When the doors shut, darkness swallowed me whole. For a moment, that darkness felt like safety. The truck rumbled to life, engine vibrating beneath me as we pulled away from the estate. I exhaled for the first time since hearing Elias say the word accident. I thought maybe the worst part was over. I was wrong. The truck had been driving for maybe 30 minutes when it suddenly jerked sideways. Boxes slammed into me. Something heavy hit my shoulder, sending pain shooting down my arm. The truck swerved again, harder this time. I heard the driver shouting, the screech of tires, the metallic clatter of something dragging. I grabbed the nearest handle to steady myself. "What is happening?" I whispered into the darkness, though no one could hear me. Another violent swerve threw me into the opposite wall. My head cracked against metal. Stars burst across my vision. The truck tilted. For a terrifying second, I felt weightless. Then everything crashed downward. The truck flipped onto its side with a deafening roar. The impact knocked the air out of my lungs. I hit the floor, the wall, then the floor again as cargo slid past me like avalanches. A crate corner struck my ribs, forcing a cry from my throat. Finally, the truck went still. A hot, sharp pain pulsed across my side. Dust filled the air. I coughed and tried to crawl toward the back doors, which were now partially cracked open from the crash. My vision blurred. Outside, I heard distant voices. Police radios, footsteps crunching gravel. "Driver is conscious." "No major injuries," someone said. Another voice called, "Back door's busted. I'll check it." Panic surged through me. If the police found me, they would report me missing. My disappearance would go straight to Elias. I dragged myself toward the narrow opening, squeezing through before anyone reached it. My foot slipped on loose dirt, sending me tumbling down a small slope. Sharp rocks scraped my palms and arms. My breath hitched with each painful inch, but I forced myself forward until the voices grew fainter behind me. The landscape around me was nothing but darkness and desert brush. The taste of sand coated my tongue. My legs buckled beneath me. I tried to stand. I fell again. The stars above blurred into streaks. I knew I needed to move. Hide. Something. Anything. But the world tilted violently. My shoulder burned where the crate hit me. My ribs ached each time I inhaled. I crawled toward the faint glow of the highway. Maybe someone would drive by. Maybe I could wave them down. Maybe I would collapse before that happened. I made it 3 more feet before my arms gave out. My body slumped onto the cold ground. I tasted blood. The wind whipped across my skin, carrying the smell of sagebrush and engine oil. My last thought before everything went black was simple and terrifying. I escaped the mansion only to die out here alone. Then the world disappeared. The first thing I felt was heat. Not scorching heat, but the warmth of a heavy blanket tucked around my shoulders. The kind of warmth that made my mind drift toward safety even when my body screamed in pain. My ribs throbbed with every breath my shoulder burned, and the metallic taste of blood lingered on my tongue. I opened my eyes slowly, my lashes sticking together from dust and dried tears. A fluorescent light flickered overhead, humming faintly. The air smelled like motor oil, old rubber, and something sharp and metallic. I was lying on a cot placed against a wall of dented metal cabinets, their surfaces covered in stickers from racing teams and faded decals from decades past. For a few seconds, I could not remember where I was or how I got here. My mind was foggy, and every memory felt like it belonged to someone else. Then a voice cut through the haze. "You're awake. Deep. Steady. Close." I turned my head and saw a man leaning against a workbench cluttered with wrenches, spark plugs, and mismatched bolts. He looked to be in his mid-30s, tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-browned skin and dark hair pulled back loosely. His eyes were the most striking thing about him, calm and assessing, like someone who had seen chaos before and learned not to flinch. He held a metal mug in one hand and a white towel in the other. "Don't try to sit up yet," he said. "You took a rough hit." My lips parted, but my voice cracked. "Where am I? Reyes Auto and Salvage," he replied. "A few miles outside Sandrock." Sandrock, a desert town no one talked about. I swallowed hard as fragments of memory slammed back into place. The crash, the desert, crawling through gravel. Darkness swallowing me whole. "I found you near the highway." He continued crossing the room to kneel beside the cot. "You were half buried in dirt, breathing shallow. I thought you were dead at first." His hand hovered as if he wanted to help me sit up but did not want to cross a boundary. "I brought you here, cleaned the worst cuts, wrapped your ribs. You should get looked at by a doctor, but you were dehydrated and barely conscious. A hospital might have asked too many questions. You seemed like someone who didn't want questions." My pulse quickened. He had no idea how right he was. What's your name?" I whispered. "Caleb Reyes," he said. "And yours?" I froze. My real name was a death sentence. Elias's men could be searching for me already. Every mile between me and the mansion felt like borrowed time. I forced my voice to steady. "Mara, it's Mara." Caleb studied me for a beat, not suspicious, just observant in a quiet, thoughtful way. "All right, Mara," he said. "Try drinking this." He handed me the mug. Water. Plain water, but it tasted like the purest thing I had ever had. My hands shook as I drank slowly. He did not push for more. He simply sat back on his heels, letting me breathe. I glanced around the garage. A half-disassembled race car sat in the center on jack stands, its metal frame exposed. Tools were arranged neatly on pegboards. A dusty fan rattled in the corner, pushing warm desert air around the room. There was no luxury here. No marble floors, no chandeliers, no photographers waiting to capture my smile. For the first time in months, no one asked anything from me. It felt unreal. Too unreal. My guard rose instinctively. He must have seen it in my eyes because he said quietly, "You don't have to be scared. I don't plan on calling anyone. Why not? I asked before I could stop myself." He shrugged lightly. "You looked like someone who needed help, not trouble. People end up out here for all kinds of reasons. I don't need to know yours unless you want to tell it." His words startled me with their sincerity. No curiosity, no prying, just space. I could not remember the last time I had been given space. Before I could respond, pain stabbed beneath my ribs, and I winced. Caleb reached for the first aid kit. "You cracked at least one rib," he said. "Maybe two. You should move slow. Your shoulder's bruised and not broken, but it'll hurt for a while." He rewrapped the bandage gently, his touch firm but careful. "Did someone hurt you?" he asked, voice low. My breath caught. "Not yet, I thought, but they will if they find me." I forced a small shake of my head. "It was the crash," I whispered. "Just the crash." His gaze lingered on me as if he sensed the truth sitting just behind the lie, but he did not push. Instead, he stood and moved to the small stove in the corner. "You should eat," he said. "I made soup. It's not fancy, but it'll help." The scent of warm broth filled the room. My stomach tightened with hunger, reminding me I had not eaten since before the gala. I accepted the bowl with trembling hands. He sat against the workbench again, keeping a respectful distance while I ate. When I finally looked up at him, he asked the question I had been dreading. "Mara, are you running from someone?" The words lodged in my throat. I had no script for this, no perfect lie, no safe truth. I met his steady gaze, and for one terrifying moment, I almost told him everything. That my fiance planned to kill my father, that I was supposed to be dead too, that the world outside this garage was hunting me. But if Caleb knew the truth, he would be in danger. Elias would not hesitate to silence anyone who helped me. So I swallowed the truth and forced out the only answer that would keep him alive. "I'm just trying to get away," I said softly. "That's all." Caleb nodded once, absorbing the answer like a man who understood more than he let on. "Then you can stay here until you figure out where you're going next." The offer settled over me like something impossible. Safety, shelter, time. Things I had not had in months. I looked at him, this quiet stranger with grease-stained hands and patient eyes, and felt something unfamiliar stir in my chest. Gratitude, hope, fear, all tangled together. I whispered, "Thank you, Caleb." He gave a small nod, then turned to adjust the fan, giving me privacy. And for the first time since hearing Elias plan my father's murder, I let myself believe I might survive long enough to decide my own future. I woke the next morning to sunlight filtering through dusty skylights, warming the cold metal shelves around me. For a moment, I forgot where I was, forgot the crash, forgot Elias, forgot the mansion and the betrayal and everything else. All I knew was the faint smell of coffee drifting through the air and the quiet clatter of tools somewhere nearby. Then reality settled in again. I was in a stranger's garage, hiding behind a false name, bruised, broken, and terrified. But I was also alive. I pushed the blanket aside and tried to sit up. Pain shot through my ribs, but not as sharply as the night before. Caleb noticed the movement instantly. He was kneeling by the race car frame, tightening something with a wrench. He looked over his shoulder. "Morning. Take it slow." His voice had that same quiet steadiness I remembered from the night before, the kind of voice that made the world feel less dangerous. He stood and walked toward me with a mug of coffee. "Here. Careful. It's hot." I took it, my fingers brushing his for a moment. That brief contact startled me more than it should have. Kindness had not touched me in a long time. I sipped the coffee, letting the warmth settle in my chest. "You didn't have to do all this," I said softly. "Most people would have left me there." "Most people don't find a half-unconscious woman lying by the road," he replied. "Besides, you looked like you needed a place to breathe." A place to breathe. The words hit deeper than he probably intended. I looked around the garage again. This space was nothing like my world of marble floors and steel boardrooms and designer gowns. It was messy, It was loud. It smelled like oil and metal and sun-baked rubber, but it felt real, safe. I wanted to help, even if just to feel useful again. So I forced myself to stand. "Is there anything I can do to pay you back?" I asked. "I don't like feeling like a burden." Caleb raised an eyebrow, amused. "You can barely walk straight. Maybe start with not falling over." I rolled my eyes despite myself. "I'm not completely useless." "All right then," he said, handing me a broom. "Start with sweeping." Slowly. I took it, ignoring the sharp ache in my ribs. Sweeping was a small thing, but it grounded me. Dust gathered in soft clouds as I pushed the broom across the concrete floor. Caleb worked nearby, occasionally glancing over to make sure I was not pushing myself too hard. Hours passed quietly. No questions, no demands. Just breathing space. Just the steady rhythm of survival. Later in the afternoon, he stepped out to check something in the yard. While he was gone, I wandered toward the far corner of the garage where a half-covered chassis sat beneath a dusty tarp. Curious, I lifted the fabric slightly. The car underneath was beautiful in its own stripped-down way. A skeletal form of brushed metal, carefully welded seams, and sweeping aerodynamic curves. It looked like a dream frozen in the middle of becoming real. I leaned closer, noticing the airflow sketches taped on the wall. They were good, thoughtful, but slightly off. A small adjustment to the slope of the rear would reduce drag by at least 6%. Another adjustment to the intake angle would improve efficiency. My fingers twitched with the urge to fix them. It was a familiar instinct, one I had spent years burying as my life shifted from engineering rooms to charity galas, from design labs to the polished world Elias curated. But standing there surrounded by tools and metal and raw potential, I felt that old part of myself awaken. Without thinking, I picked up a pencil lying near a stack of blueprints. I adjusted a few measurements, drew a corrected airflow line, marked a suggestion for a new weight distribution. Nothing dramatic, just the kind of tweaks someone deeply familiar with performance vehicles would make. When I stepped back, my heart pounded. I should not have touched anything. This was his creation, not mine. I dropped the pencil as if it had burned me. The garage door creaked open and I froze. Caleb entered, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. His eyes drifted toward the board behind me. He stopped walking. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he stepped closer and examined the markings I had made. "You did this?" he asked. Heat flooded my cheeks. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have touched anything. I was just right," he said quietly. "You were right about all of it." His eyes lifted to mine, searching. "Most people don't even know what airflow maps are. Where'd you learn this?" Panic fluttered in my chest, but I forced a shrug. My mother was a seamstress. I lied smoothly. I guess I picked things up. It made no sense, and we both knew it. But he did not push. Instead, he picked up the blueprint again, studying the clean lines I had drawn. "You have a good eye," he said. "A really good eye." The words warmed something inside me that had been cold for years. That night, after he closed the main bay, he reheated leftover stew and set a bowl in front of me. We ate in silence at the small folding table by the window. The desert sky outside grew darker purple and vast. At some point, he looked up at me. "You know," he said, "for someone who says she's running from nothing, you flinch every time you hear a car outside." I stared down at my bowl, my throat tightening. "Old habits," I murmured. "Some habits come from fear," he replied. "Some come from surviving it." I looked up, startled by the accuracy of his words. He was not prying. He was simply seeing me, more clearly than anyone had in a long time. When he stood to clean the dishes, I whispered, "Thank you for letting me stay." He paused. "You're safe here, Mara." Safe. The word felt heavy, foreign, and dangerously comforting. Later, when I lay on the cot again, wrapped in the same blanket he had placed over me, I realized something that scared me almost as much as Elias did. In one single day, this man had shown me more kindness than anyone in my world of wealth and power had in years. And it was the first time I felt something close to safety. The days that followed settled into a quiet rhythm, the kind of rhythm I had almost forgotten existed. Each morning, the desert light poured into the garage like liquid gold, warming the concrete floor and softening the sharp edges of reality. I swept organized, folded, wiped down surfaces, anything to feel less like a ghost passing through someone else's life. Caleb never asked for explanations. He never asked why I flinched when headlights swept across the windows at night, or why I stiffened every time someone unfamiliar appeared in the yard. He simply kept working, kept offering silence where other people offered suspicion, kept giving me space as if he understood grief and fear in ways words could never capture. But peace does not last, not when someone like Elias is searching for you. I should have known it was only a matter of time before danger found this town, too. It started with a black SUV parked at the gas station across from the garage. At first, I barely noticed it through the heat shimmer rising from the pavement. It could have belonged to a tourist or a local worker or a traveling salesman, but something about it made my stomach twist. The tinted windows, the engine idling too long, the way it stayed parked even when no one got out. I pretended not to see it, pretended I was imagining things, pretended the world I was running from had not reached Sandrock. But Caleb noticed. He was replacing brake pads on an old pickup when he caught me staring. His gaze flicked toward the SUV, then back to me, a quiet tension settling in his shoulders. He did not mention it until hours later. It was evening, the desert cooling as the sun dipped below the horizon. I was closing up the parts cabinet when Caleb walked over, wiping grease off his forearms. "That SUV's been around 3 times today," he said. My chest tightened. "Maybe someone's lost." Maybe he said, though he clearly did not believe it. Or maybe someone's looking for something. Or someone. The broom in my hand felt suddenly heavy. Caleb. He leaned against the workbench, arms crossed, eyes steady but not unkind. "Mara, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly." My throat constricted. "Are you in danger?" I hesitated, searching for a lie that could keep him safe, something simple and dismissive and believable. But nothing came. He waited, patient and quiet. Then he said something that cracked something in me. "I can handle danger," he said softly. "I can't handle lies." Those words hit me harder than any threat Elias could have made. Lies had been my armor for so long that I barely remembered what truth felt like. But telling the truth would drag Caleb into a storm he did not deserve, so I forced myself to look away. "I don't want anyone getting hurt because of me," I whispered. "Sometimes staying is more dangerous than leaving." The words trembled out of me before I could stop them. Caleb studied me for a long moment, something unspoken moving behind his eyes. "If you ever decide to tell me the real story," he said, "I'll listen." Then he walked away, leaving me with an ache in my chest I could not name. That night, sleep did not come easily. Every sound outside felt too sharp, every shadow too deep. Around midnight, I heard footsteps, soft, calculated. Not Caleb's, not casual. I sat up, heart beating against my ribs. Through the narrow window, I saw the same SUV parked farther down the road, now closer to the driveway, its headlights off. A figure moved near the edge of the fence. I swallowed a cry. Not yet panic. Not yet, I told myself. But fear sharpened everything inside me. Morning came with a dull orange glow. Caleb looked restless, like he had not slept either. He brewed coffee but kept glancing out the window every few minutes. Around noon, someone walked into the garage. A stranger. Tall, tan, wearing a polo shirt tucked too neatly into his jeans. His smile was polite but wrong in a way I could feel in my bones. "Afternoon," he said. "Looking for directions." Caleb straightened slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. "Where to?" "Looking for a girl," the man said, scanning the room with too much interest. "She was involved in an accident nearby." My pulse stilled. He described me without saying my name. He used vague details, the kind that sound innocent until you realize he is studying every corner of the room, every shadow, every possible place I could hide. Caleb's jaw tightened. "Haven't seen anyone like that." "Sure about that?" the man asked, smiling thinly. "Pretty girl. Blonde. Maybe injured. You'd remember her." Caleb's voice dropped. "I said no." The man's eyes hardened. Then, after a slow nod, he turned and left, but the way he looked at the hills told me he would circle back. As soon as he disappeared, Caleb closed the garage door, the metal rattling with tension. He turned to me, his expression unreadable halfway between fear and something fiercer. "Mara," he said quietly, "tell me the truth. Now." My hands shook. My breath shook. Everything inside me felt like it was collapsing, but I could not do it. If he knew who I really was, he would be dragged into a nightmare he did not choose. So I did the only thing I could. I packed. That evening, while the desert sky turned pink and gold, I folded the hoodie he had given me and placed it on the cot. I grabbed the small bag he had let me borrow, stuffing into it the few things I had collected, even though none of them truly belonged to me. I wrote a short note. Nothing personal, nothing dangerous. Just thank you. Before dawn, I slipped quietly toward the garage exit. But Caleb was already there, leaning against his truck, arms crossed, watching me with an expression that twisted something deep inside me. "I figured you'd try to run," he said softly. I stopped. "I can't stay. It's not safe." "For who?" he asked. "You or me." My voice wavered. "Both." He shook his head once. "I'm not letting you disappear while someone is out there hunting you." He stepped closer. Not intimidating, just steady. "I'm not asking for answers. I just need to know you're alive." The sincerity in his voice cracked something inside me. I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could find the words, the world outside shifted again. The danger I ran from was no longer far away. It had found the town. And we both knew this was only the beginning. The night the fire came, the air felt wrong long before the flames appeared. The desert was too still, too quiet, as if the world were holding its breath. Caleb and I spent most of the evening in silence, each pretending not to watch the windows. The black SUV had passed by twice that day, slower each time. By sundown, my nerves were shaking beneath my skin. Caleb locked the garage doors early and double-checked the side gate. He tried to pretend it was routine, but his movements were too precise, too wary. I sat on the old sofa in the corner, hugging my knees, staring at the faint glow of the single lamp beside me. Every crackle of the cooling metal, every gust of wind against the siding made my heart jolt. "You should sleep," Caleb said quietly as he finished closing the main bay. "You need the rest." "I won't sleep," I admitted. "Not tonight." He hesitated, then nodded. "All right, then keep close." The kindness in his voice almost broke me. I wanted to tell him everything then. I wanted to confess the truth so he would understand why danger followed me like a shadow. But admitting the truth would drag him deeper into a threat he didn't deserve. So I stayed quiet. He brewed a pot of coffee even though it was nearly midnight. We sat across from each other, mugs between us, saying nothing. Silence stretched, but not the uncomfortable kind. More like two people listening for the same danger. The smell of smoke reached us first, not the sharp, clean scent of someone burning brush. This was oily chemical heavy on the air. My body reacted before my mind did. I set the mug down too fast. "Caleb," I whispered. He stiffened, nostrils flaring. He stood crossed to the back door and opened it just an inch. His entire posture changed. "Get back," he said quickly. "Now." I stepped back as he threw the door open. The night was glowing orange. Flames crawled along the side of the workshop building, licking upward, fueled by something that burned too fast to be natural. Someone had poured oil along the wall. Someone had planned this. Someone wanted to trap us inside. Heat punched against my face. My lungs tightened at the acrid smell. Caleb slammed the door shut, locking it. "Stay here," he said. "I'm calling it in." He grabbed the phone, but the line clicked uselessly. The reception light blinked red. The fire was spreading faster now, climbing the walls. Crackling echoed through the structure like bones snapping. My pulse raced. "Caleb, what do we do?" He didn't answer at first. He moved with deliberate speed, grabbing the heavy fire extinguisher mounted near the desk. "I need to save my dad's toolbox," he said through clenched teeth. "It's the only thing I can't lose in this shop." I grabbed his arm. "Caleb, no. Forget the tools. We need to get out. Please." He shook his head once. I can't let it burn. It's all I have left of him. His eyes held a certainty that told me arguing was useless. He was going in whether I wanted him to or not. Before I could stop him, he pulled open the interior door that led to the adjacent workshop. A wave of heat slammed into us. Smoke curled out like dark fingers, forcing tears into my eyes. He stepped into the inferno with the extinguisher lifted. "Caleb!" I cried, reaching out, but he disappeared into the smoke. My chest seized. I coughed, stumbling back. I tried to follow, but the heat scorched my skin even from several feet away. I would only slow him down. But waiting was agony. Every second stretched impossibly long. The fire roared louder, consuming wood and metal, warping shelves, shattering glass. Then I heard it, a coughing shout. Caleb emerged from the smoke, stumbling, dragging a small metal chest in one hand and shielding his face with his arm. His shirt sleeve was singed. His hair was dusted with ash. The extinguisher emptied in his other hand. "Go!" he choked out. "We need to go." He dropped the extinguisher and grabbed my wrist. We ran toward the side exit as the flames began creeping through the wall behind us. The heat grew unbearable. A burning beam crashed inches from Caleb's shoulder. A spray of sparks lit the air. He shoved the door open and pushed me outside into the cold desert night. Fresh air hit my lungs like knives. I coughed violently, doubling over. Caleb collapsed to his knees beside me, gasping for breath, clutching the toolbox to his chest. I grabbed his shoulders. "Caleb, you could have died." He gave a hoarse laugh that ended in a cough. "You almost did," he rasped. "I'm not losing someone else." His words shook something deep inside me. The garage burned behind us, flames devouring everything he had worked for. The night glowed orange, the fire reflecting in his eyes as he stared at the collapsing structure. I wrapped my arms around him without thinking, pulling him close, more afraid than I had ever been. He leaned into me, forehead resting against my shoulder. For a moment, the world fell away. Only the two of us existed, clinging to each other in the flickering light of everything we had just lost. "This is my fault," I whispered. "They came for me." But Caleb shook his head weakly. "Whoever is after you, they are not taking you. Not while I'm breathing." His voice cracked on the last word. We stayed like that until the fire truck sirens echoed from down the highway, slowly growing louder. As the firefighters rushed to control the blaze, I watched Caleb's face illuminated by the shifting flames. Grief, anger, resolve, and something else. Something that terrified me more than the SUV, more than Elias, more than the danger closing in. He cared. He cared deeply, enough to walk through fire for me. And all I could think was, if he dies, it will be because of me. The guilt was suffocating, and I knew one terrible truth. Tonight was not the end. It was only the beginning. The morning after the fire felt unreal, as if the world had been wiped clean and rewritten with smoke and ashes. The air was thick with the smell of burned rubber and charred metal. The garage that had sheltered me, the place where I had breathed freely for the first time in months, was now a skeleton of blackened beams and twisted steel. Caleb stood in front of the ruins, silent, his right arm wrapped in gauze. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the wreckage as if staring hard enough could undo the night. I hovered a few feet away, unsure whether to speak. Unsure whether my words would help or only deepen the wound. I knew this was my fault. Even if he never said it, even if he never let himself think it, I knew. He had walked into that fire because of me, and I had brought the danger that caused it. "Does it hurt?" I asked, gently nodding toward his bandaged arm. "I've had worse," he said, though his voice was rough. "You should see the car that did it." He tried to smile, but it faltered. The silence after that stretched long enough to feel like a border between us. He walked deeper into the remains, kicking aside burnt insulation and melted plastic. Pieces of the garage crunched beneath his boots like brittle bones. I followed slowly. Firefighters had already left, but the deputy from Sandrock County Sheriff's Office was still there taking final notes. He was a middle-aged man with a sunburned neck and tired eyes. "Morning, Reyes," the deputy said, stepping over a pile of broken bricks. I'm sorry about the damage. Yeah, Caleb answered flatly. Me too. The deputy turned toward me, polite but curious. Ma'am, were you here when the fire started? Before I could respond, he paused. His gaze narrowed ever so slightly. Something in his expression shifted. Recognition. My blood turned cold. You look familiar, he said, studying my face. Have we met? My throat tightened. I don't think so. He tilted his head. You sure? He reached into the pocket of his uniform. His fingers unfolded a slightly wrinkled paper, a printed alert, a missing person bulletin. My picture. My real picture. Marina Hale missing socialite. Blonde hair. Blue eyes. Last seen at her own engagement gala. He stared at the photo, then back at me, then again at the photo slower as if letting the truth settle into place. My knees weakened. That's you, he said. Not a question. A confirmation. The kind that cracked the world open. Caleb's posture changed instantly. He stepped closer to me, protective, confused but also hurt in a way I had feared from the beginning. The deputy's hand moved to his radio. Dispatch. I think we found the missing Hale woman. Send units. Panic surged inside me. Please, I whispered. Don't do this. I'm not missing. I left on purpose. The deputy frowned. Ms. Hale, you need to come with me. This man? He glanced at Caleb, may have been holding you without consent. Caleb stiffened. I did what deputy I said, quickly stepping forward despite the pounding in my ribs. He saved my life. He didn't kidnap me, but it did not matter. The second the radio crackled, the situation became bigger than truth, bigger than my words. 2 more patrol cars rolled up minutes later. Officers stepped out, hands resting on their belts, not aggressive but alert. Someone handed me a blanket and guided me aside. Another officer approached Caleb. Sir, we need you to come with us while we sort this out. I didn't do anything, he said, frustration tightening his voice. She showed up injured. I helped her. That's it. We understand, the officer said calmly. But given the circumstances, we need to ask you some questions at the station. No, I said, stepping toward them. He didn't do anything wrong. Caleb didn't look at me. That hurt more than anything. He kept his gaze on the deputy. I'm not resisting, he said. Let's get this over with. He held out his wrists. The officers cuffed him loosely, not treating him like a criminal, but the sight still punched the air out of my lungs. Caleb, I whispered. Finally, he looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes broke me. Confusion, betrayal, a deep hurt that came from realizing I had not been honest with him, not once. I don't know who I helped anymore, he said quietly. The words hit harder than fire, harder than fear. I reached for him, but he stepped back. Just tell them the truth, he murmured, if there is one. Then he was led toward the patrol car. I stood frozen as they closed the door behind him. The metal clicked like a verdict. The moment they drove away, the weight of everything crashed down on me. The lies I had told to protect him had become the very thing that hurt him. He had walked through fire for me, and all he received in return was suspicion and handcuffs. The deputy turned to escort me toward one of the cars, his voice softening slightly. Ms. Hale, we're taking you to the station. Just routine questions. Your family's been worried sick. My family. My father, who had dismissed the truth. Elias, who wanted him dead. The entire world I had run from was catching up again, swallowing the fragile safety I had found. As we drove away, I looked out the window toward the ruins of the garage, the place that had become a sanctuary, the place that was gone because of me. The desert wind whipped my hair into my face. My eyes burned, not from smoke, from loss, from the truth finally catching up. Everything had fallen apart, and I had no one to blame except myself. The flight back to New York felt like drifting through a dream I never wanted to return to. The city appeared beneath the airplane window like a glittering machine, cold and merciless, its skyscrapers slicing through a sky that looked far too calm for the chaos waiting below. I pressed my forehead against the glass, watching the familiar skyline draw closer, and felt a hollow heaviness settle in my chest. Sandrock had been a refuge. New York was the battlefield. The second my plane landed, the illusion of safety vanished. Two FBI agents met me at the gate, their expressions composed professional unreadable. "Miss Hale," one said, "we've been expecting you." They escorted me through a private corridor, away from reporters, away from cameras, away from the world that believed I had simply run away from an expensive wedding. I walked alongside them in silence, each step echoing like a reminder of the truth I could no longer avoid. I was not here to hide. I was here to expose everything. In a government SUV, the city blurred past us in streaks of yellow cabs, neon signs, and endless crowds of people who had no idea my fiance had planned a murder, no idea my father had refused to believe me, no idea I had nearly died in the desert. "Are you ready for this one?" Agent asked gently. "You can still back out." "No," I said, my voice steady. "I'm done running." The FBI field office was colder than I remembered from childhood school tours. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Agents moved briskly between cubicles carrying folders and cups of burnt coffee. I was led into a glass-walled conference room. Inside, a laptop sat open beside a stack of forms and a recorder. A female agent named Monroe sat across from me. She clicked her pen twice, studying me. "Ms. Hale, she said we've reviewed the files you sent anonymously before your disappearance. We need your sworn statement to move forward." "I understand." My fingers brushed the flash drive I had kept with me through every step of my escape. The last piece of evidence, the final thread tying everything together. One wrong move, and I could still lose everything. Agent Monroe nodded toward the drive. "Whenever you're ready." My hand trembled as I plugged it in. The screen flashed with folders full of encrypted emails, financial records, shell company transfers, offshore accounts, and the most damning pieces of all, the conversations about my father. "Tell us how you obtained this," she said. So I did. I told them about the night in the hallway, the overheard conversation, the fear crawling down my spine when Elias mentioned a scheduled accident. I told them about the gala, the disbelief in my father's eyes when I tried to warn him, the suffocating security meant to contain me, my escape through the service wing, the truck, the crash, the desert, Sandrock, Caleb. My voice caught when I said his name. Agent Monroe noticed, but she kept her tone gentle. "Ms. Hale, the information you've given us is enough to secure a warrant, but before we proceed, you need to understand something." She leaned forward. "Once this begins, there is no protection for relationships, for reputations, for the company. Your family will be exposed, and you will be at the center of it." I closed my eyes. I could still feel the heat of the fire that destroyed the garage. I could still see Caleb coughing, stumbling out of the smoke, carrying the only thing left of his father. I could still hear the hurt in his voice when he said he didn't know who he had helped. My lies had cost him too much. The least I could do now was tell the truth. "Proceed," I said. "I want justice." The next hours blurred into one long confession. I answered every question, signed every document, listened to agents murmur among themselves as the evidence spread across a dozen screens. My father arrived halfway through, escorted by two corporate attorneys. When he walked into the room, his eyes were red-rimmed and exhausted. "Marina," he whispered, voice cracking. "I thought you were dead." I wanted to be angry. I wanted to accuse him of not listening, of failing me, of choosing business over blood. But when he stepped toward me, his expression raw and shaken, my anger dissolved. "I tried to tell you, I said. I know," he whispered. "I should have believed you. I should have protected you." His voice broke on the last word. For the first time in my life, I saw my father not as the titan of industry, not as the Hale patriarch, but as a man terrified of losing the only family he had left. He reached for my hand. I let him take it. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it." Tears blurred my vision. "Then let's finish this," I replied. He nodded, determined, finally ready to see the truth. The agents returned with printed orders, signatures, and authorization to execute a controlled operation. Elias's arrest would not be quiet. It could not be. They needed him on record admitting everything. They needed him cornered. They needed him to believe he was still winning. By late afternoon, a plan was in place: a staged meeting, a fake investor, hidden cameras, live audio, a trap woven so carefully that even Elias, with all his cunning, would walk straight into it. When the agents finished briefing us, they asked if I wanted to be present during the operation. I shook my head. "I don't need to hear him lie again," I said. "I just need him to fall." Agent Monroe placed a folder in front of me. "You've done the hard part. Let us take it from here." She paused. "You're safe now." But the word safe didn't feel true, not yet. Not while Caleb was still hurting because of me. Not while the world I had fled still had the power to destroy the people who had shown me kindness. As evening fell across Manhattan, I stepped outside the FBI building and stood on the sidewalk watching the city lights flicker awake. Taxis honked. Sirens wailed in the distance. Life rushed around me with relentless speed. New York had never felt bigger or lonelier. But I straightened my shoulders, because tomorrow everything would change. Elias would fall. The truth would rise. And I would finish what I started the night I ran from my own wedding. The morning of Elias's downfall began like any other in New York, which somehow made it feel even more surreal. The city hummed with its usual rhythm horns, blaring trains, rattling underground people rushing through crosswalks with coffee cups in hand. No one knew that by noon, one of the most powerful men in the Hale dynasty's orbit would be exposed as a criminal on national television. No one knew except the FBI, a handful of government officials, my father and me. I stood in a private observation room above the conference hall where the operation was set to unfold. The space smelled faintly of carpet glue and old wiring. A row of monitors lined the table in front of me, each showing a different camera angle of the room below. FBI technicians adjusted audio feeds, their voices low and precise. Agents moved with a calm intensity that made my stomach tighten. My hands shook as I held a styrofoam cup of tea I had no intention of drinking. Agent Monroe approached, tablet in hand. "He's on his way," she said. 5 minutes. My pulse quickened. "And he doesn't suspect anything." "None," she said. "Your father helped sell the narrative that this is one final negotiation before signing the consolidation papers. Elias thinks he's about to secure controlling interest in Hale Dynasty." She lowered her voice. "Arrogance blinds people. Today, it's working in our favor." My eyes drifted toward the largest monitor. Below, the conference room had been staged to appear like a high-level investor meeting. A round mahogany table gleamed under the recessed lighting. A carafe of water and glasses sat neatly arranged. A man posing as an international investor waited inside, reviewing fake documents designed to lure Elias into boasting. Beyond the glass cameras, hidden vents in the corners, and a decorative plant near the lectern, every angle covered, every word recorded, every lie preserved. And I was about to watch the man who had tried to kill my father walk straight into his own confession. My stomach twisted. My father arrived in the observation room a moment later, his expression tight but resolute. He rested a hand on my shoulder. "Stay strong, Marina." I nodded, though strength felt like a fragile thing barely clinging to me. He stood beside me, watching the monitors as if bracing himself for impact. When the hallway camera flickered, Elias entered the frame. He looked immaculate in a tailored navy suit, his posture confident, his expression composed. He carried an embossed leather folder, no doubt filled with the forged contracts he believed he would use to secure power over Hale Dynasty. I felt bile rise in my throat, just seeing him. He walked toward the conference room like a man stepping onto a stage where he expected applause. As he reached the door, he straightened his tie and smiled. The kind of smile that had fooled investors, journalists, even my own family. But now the cameras watched him with eyes sharper than any audience he had ever faced. Agent Monroe leaned forward with a small earpiece. "All units stand by. Confirm audio. Voices confirmed from various channels. Audio clear? Visual clear? Weapons secured." A pause. "Proceed." On the screen, Elias entered the conference room. Mr. Vaughn, the undercover investor, said warmly, "Thank you for meeting with me." "My pleasure," Elias said, shaking his hand. "Let's talk numbers." He sat, opened his folder, and began gliding through the fabricated financial summaries the FBI had prepared. It didn't take long for his confidence to swell. Once Victor Hale is out of the way, he said casually, the transition will be smooth. My breath caught. My father stiffened beside me. The undercover investor leaned forward. And you're certain the timing will work in your favor. Elias smiled. Of course, it's already in motion. Marina will sign all necessary transfers after the wedding. He chuckled, unaware he was sealing his fate. She's too emotional to understand what she's giving away. I gripped the edge of the table until my knuckles whitened. Hearing him talk about me like I was a pawn made my blood boil, but anger was nothing compared to the wave of disgust that hit me when he continued. By the end of the quarter, he said, lowering his voice conspiratorially, Victor's accident will finalize matters. Unfortunate, yes, but inevitable. He leaned back. That's how business works. Agent Monroe tapped her screen twice, marking the timestamps where he incriminated himself. We have him, she whispered. We have everything. Down below, the investor nodded slowly, giving him enough rope to hang himself. And you're comfortable discussing this with me, a foreign partner? Why not? Elias replied. You're as invested in the outcome as I am. That was enough. Agent Monroe raised her hand. Go! The conference room doors burst open. FBI agents flooded the space badges, raised voices commanding. Elias shot to his feet, blindsided. What is this? He demanded. Sit down, an agent ordered. Elias Vaughn, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, financial fraud, racketeering, and attempted coercion. Cameras from the undercover setup streamed it all. Every second. Every pixel. Live. My father exhaled sharply. Not relief. Something heavier. A release of months of denial and fear. I watched the screen, unable to blink. Elias tried to regain control. This is absurd. Victor, tell them. Marina, tell them. His voice cracked desperation, replacing arrogance. He had no idea that I was watching from above, that I had already told the truth, that the game was over. Handcuffs snapped around his wrists. Agents guided him out of the room as he shouted about lawyers' leverage betrayal. For a moment, his eyes flicked up toward the glass wall of the observation deck. He couldn't see me, but I saw the panic bloom in his expression, like a fracture breaking through his perfect mask. By noon, every major network carried the footage. Words scrolled across screens. Hale Dynasty scandal internal takeover plot. Billionaire fiance arrested murder conspiracy. Uncovered news anchors dissected every detail. Social media exploded. The world watched my life unravel and rebuild itself in real time. And then it was my turn. The press conference was held in the building's main auditorium. The cameras waited. The microphones waited. The world waited. I stepped onto the stage in a black blazer and faced them all. The lights were bright, but I did not flinch. I am terminating my engagement to Elias Vaughn, I said clearly. Flashes erupted. I do so with full awareness of the lies and criminal activity he committed. No one, no matter how powerful, has the right to manipulate a life or a legacy for personal gain. My voice did not shake. When the conference ended, my father hugged me tightly. I am proud of you, he whispered. I closed my eyes, but even as the world praised my bravery, all I could think about was a small, burned garage in the desert, and the man who had protected me without knowing who I really was. I returned to my hotel room that night with applause still fading from my ears, reporters still shouting my name in the lobby, and the weight of the entire Hale scandal hanging over my shoulders like a mantle I had never wanted to wear. The city outside glowed with a restless energy, horns blaring, sirens, wailing lights flashing across skyscraper windows, but inside the room, the silence was sharp and suffocating. I kicked off my heels, sat at the edge of the bed, and buried my face in my hands. Elias was gone. Justice was moving. My father was safe. The world saw me as strong, brave, unwavering. But none of them knew that my heart was still stuck in a burned garage in Nevada, standing in front of a man whose eyes had filled with disbelief and hurt when he realized who I really was. Caleb had saved my life without needing my last name. He had taken me in without demanding details. He had trusted me enough to let me stay even when he sensed something was wrong, and I had repaid him with lies. Now I had the power to change the course of his life, even if I could never fix what I had broken between us. The plan had been sitting quietly in the back of my mind since the night I left Sandrock. I pulled out my laptop, logged into a secure network, and searched for the National Automotive Innovation Showcase. It was one of the most respected engineering competitions in the country, a launching pad for unknown builders and mechanics to enter national manufacturing programs or receive grant funding. I scrolled through the requirements, reading every line, every rule. Photos of the prototype, technical breakdown, design philosophy, mechanical innovations, environmental adaptations, performance justifications, a written profile of the builder. I thought of Caleb's garage, small but meticulous, filled with worn tools and half-finished dreams. I thought of the steel frame he had been restoring with such care, the sketches he had drawn by hand, the notes I had once rewritten to help him refine the airflow calculations. He had talent that could change his life. He just did not believe that a man like him deserved to be seen. But I had seen him, clearly, fully, more truthfully than anyone had ever seen me. I opened a blank application form. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. For a moment, fear crawled up my spine. Would he be angry if he knew? Would he reject any help from me? Would he feel used? I swallowed hard. This was not about forgiveness. This was not about us. This was about a man who deserved a chance. The only way I could repay him was by giving him what he had refused to take for himself a future. So I began to type. Name of applicant: Caleb Reyes. Shop Reyes Auto and Salvage. Location: Sandrock, Nevada. I uploaded the highest quality photos I had taken of his car during the week I helped him catalog the parts. I found the early design sketches he had left on his workbench and scanned them. Then I opened my engineering notes. I read them twice, adjusted terminology so it reflected his voice rather than mine, and formatted them according to the showcase guidelines. For the written statement of innovation, I paused. What could I say about Caleb that would reflect his skill without exposing his vulnerabilities? I typed slowly, deliberately. This design focuses on functional performance over aesthetic perfection. It reflects the work ethic of a builder who believes engineering is not just about machines, but about giving people a reason to keep moving forward. I hesitated, then added one more line. The creator of this prototype has rebuilt more than engines. He has rebuilt hope. My throat tightened. Not enough to cry, just enough to remember. At the bottom of the application, a final question blinked at me. If selected, would you like to be contacted as the submitter of this entry? I checked no without hesitation. This was his moment, not mine. I reviewed the entire file 3 more times before hitting submit. The confirmation message appeared simple and anticlimactic. Your application has been received. I closed the laptop with shaking hands. Then I sat back, staring at the ceiling as exhaustion swept through me. I had done what I could. Whether he ever knew it or not, his life was about to change. The next morning, I returned to corporate headquarters to finalize my resignation from Hale Dynasty. The boardroom was filled with executives shifting uncomfortably in their chairs, unsure whether to congratulate me, fear me, or both. I signed the papers without ceremony. My father stood beside me, his expression soft with gratitude and regret. What will you do now? He asked quietly. Live my own life, I said, for the first time. What I did not say was that my future felt uncertain. My heart still ached for a man who had every right to never want to see me again. Days passed, then weeks. Media coverage of the Hale scandal reached its peak before slowly drifting into the background noise of the endless news cycle. I kept checking the showcase website, refreshing the finalist announcements page, even though results were not expected for another month. I told myself it did not matter whether Caleb won, but I prayed he would. Not for glory, not for ego, for a path forward, for a chance to build the life he deserved instead of the one circumstance had forced on him. Then one afternoon, as I sipped coffee in my hotel room, an update appeared on the website. Finalists will be notified by mail within 5 business days. I exhaled slowly. The decision was out of my hands. For the first time since leaving Sandrock, I allowed myself to imagine what might come next. Not for me, but for him. And maybe someday, if fate was gentle, our paths might cross again under different circumstances. But whether or not they ever did, I had honored him the only way I could. I had helped him without taking anything from him. I had lifted him without touching his pride. I had done this for him, and for once it felt enough. The letter reached him before it reached anyone else, and I knew that because 5 days after the showcase announcement window opened, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown Nevada number. I stared at it for almost a full minute before opening it. It was not from Caleb. It was from the Sandrock post office. A simple reminder that I had once used their forwarding service when mailing something to myself under an alias. Somehow, the universe had a strange sense of humor nudging me toward a moment I had no control over, but I would not hear anything from him directly yet. Instead, I discovered he had been selected when I went online, checking the finalist list like a compulsive habit I could not shake. There it was. His name, his shop, his prototype. I felt a rush go through my chest so sudden I had to sit down. He had done it. He had made it. And he did not even know who had made sure the judges took a closer look at his submission. I folded onto the hotel bed, laughing softly in disbelief, tears blurring my vision. It was a shaky, emotional sound, the kind that came from the deepest part of the rib cage, half relief and half sorrow. He would be invited to Los Angeles. He would stand in front of people who had never known his name and finally receive the recognition he deserved. The invitation ceremony was scheduled for early spring at the Los Angeles Convention Center. I booked my flight 2 hours after seeing his name on the list, even though I was not sure I had the right to be there. Would he think I was intruding? Would he walk away if he saw me, but I had not done all of this for thanks. I had done it because it was the only way to honor the debt in my heart. Still, when I received a call from the event director 2 weeks later, asking if I would be willing to present the award for independent innovation, I froze. "Ms. Hale," she said warmly. "Your background, your recent advocacy work, and your visibility make you an ideal choice. We would be honored if you presented this year's award." I swallowed hard. This was no coincidence. Someone had connected my resignation speech to a narrative of rebuilding, of courage, of stepping out of a legacy. It fit too perfectly. And the universe was offering me one more chance to face what I had left behind. I accepted. The evening of the event felt like stepping into a dream stitched together from all the things I feared and all the things I wanted. The convention hall glowed under sweeping spotlights, banners hung from the rafters celebrating innovation, craftsmanship, sustainable design. Crowds of engineers, designers, mechanics, investors, and reporters filled the seats. I stood backstage in a long black dress, my palms damp, my breathing shallow. Behind the curtains, I could hear the announcer introducing the final category. My heart rattled against my ribs like something trying to escape. Then the presenter before me finished, applause rose, and a stagehand tapped my elbow. "Ms. Hale," he whispered, "you're up." I stepped into the bright light. The hall stretched out like an ocean of faces. Cameras pivoted. Screens displayed my name in crisp white letters. For a moment, the world seemed impossibly still. I lifted the microphone. "Good evening," I began, and the sound of my voice steadied something inside me. "Tonight's final award celebrates independent innovation. It honors the builders who work in quiet garages and scrapyards, the people who innovate not because they are funded or famous, but because they believe in possibility." I paused, scanning the crowd, searching instinctively, even though I had not yet spotted him. "There are people," I continued, "who change your life quietly. They do not ask for recognition. They do not seek reward. They simply show up when the world falls apart and they help you stand again." My throat tightened. The audience leaned in. I owe my life to one such man. And then I saw him. Row 6. He sat in a slightly worn navy suit, shoulders broad expression, unreadable eyes locked on me with a shock that made my breath catch. Time seemed to twist, folding the desert, the fire, the garage all into a single, impossible moment. "This year's recipient," I said softly, "embodies resilience, brilliance, and integrity." I lifted the envelope. My hands trembled only slightly. "The winner of the 2025 Independent Innovation Award is Caleb Reyes." Reyes Auto and Salvage. A wave of applause surged across the room. Cameras pivoted toward him. He remained frozen for 2 full seconds, then slowly rose to his feet. People around him clapped, some reaching out to congratulate him. He walked toward the stage with the careful, uncertain strides of someone crossing into a world they had never imagined entering. When he reached me, the applause softened into a hush, as if the whole room sensed something intimate passing between us. I held out the award plaque. His hand brushed mine. It felt like touching a memory. He did not speak at first, neither did I. Then very quietly he exhaled. You. One word. That was all. 1,000 emotions lived inside it. He took the award, but instead of turning to the cameras, he looked at me. Really looked at me. His eyes were not angry, not cold, just full of a stunned, raw understanding. Why, he asked in a whisper meant only for me. I swallowed, my voice barely audible. Because you deserved it, and because you once saved my life. His jaw tightened, not with resentment, but with a feeling I could not yet name. The cameras flashed again as we faced each other. The world waited for him to speak, but he said nothing else. Instead, he gave the slightest nod, an acknowledgement, a beginning. When the ceremony ended, he slipped away from the crowd and stepped onto the rooftop terrace. I followed a few minutes later, the evening breeze lifting my hair. He stood at the railing, the Los Angeles skyline glittering around him. I did not think I would ever see you again, he said without turning. I was not sure I had the right to, I replied. He looked at me, then, his eyes fierce and searching. You helped me. The only way I could, I whispered. He stepped closer. Are you staying this time? Hope flickered through me like a fragile flame. If you want me to. His voice softened. I never stopped. The distance between us closed, and for the first time since the night I ran, I felt home. 1 year later, the smell of motor oil and fresh paint had become the scent of my mornings, the soundtrack of my days, and strangely, the comfort of my nights. The desert sunrise warmed the wide metal roof of the new building that stood where an old garage had once burned. A sign hung proudly along the front wall, painted in bold navy letters, Reyes Hale Community Garage. Every time I saw it, something in my chest tightened, not with pain, but with the kind of emotion that grows only from survival, rebuilding, and choosing a future no one expected you to choose. The building was bigger now, with 2 full workshops, a welding corner, a small design lab lined with computers and sketch pads, and a classroom Caleb insisted on having because people need both knowledge and a place to put it to use. It was a dream he never dared to speak out loud before, not even to himself. And now it was real. I walked through the main bay holding a stack of clipboards weaving between workbenches while the sound of drills echoed against the concrete. A group of veterans leaned over an engine block laughing while one of them explained compression ratios. 2 teenagers argued playfully about spark plug timing. A young single mom practiced welding seams with quiet determination. Life pulsed through every corner of the place. When I reached the design studio, sunlight poured through the tall windows, landing on a small girl with messy brown curls who stood on tiptoe trying to copy a car sketch on a whiteboard. Grease smudged her pink dress like a badge of honor. I crouched beside her. What are you drawing today, sweetheart? She pushed her hair from her face. A racing car, like the one Mr. Reyes showed us. Her little brow creased with concentration. Do you think girls can really fix cars or draw them or build them? I smiled. Girls can fix anything, especially the things that matter. She beamed, her teeth slightly crooked, her eyes full of the kind of confidence I wished I had possessed at her age. As she returned to her drawing, I stood and watched her work. She came from a neighborhood not far from here, a place people drove past carefully and talked about quietly. Her mother worked 2 jobs. She had no father in the picture, but she had talent, and now she had a place where people believed in her. That alone made everything worth it. Across the room, Caleb watched me from the doorway, leaning on the frame with a wrench in one hand and a pencil behind his ear. He gave me a look I had come to recognize, soft around the edges, steady at the center, filled with something that had grown stronger every day since Los Angeles. She likes you, he said as I walked over. She likes you more, I countered. Only because I let her dump a whole can of bolts onto the floor and call it a sorting activity. I laughed, leaning lightly against him. "You're good with them, you know, with everyone. This place changes people." He glanced around the garage with a pride so subtle most people would miss it. "We built this place," he said. "You and me. Steel and silk." The phrase had started as a joke, something he once said while teasing me about my perfectly pressed blazer next to his dusty workbench. But it had become something else. It became us. Resilience and elegance, grit and grace, two unlikely halves building something new. As the day wound down, I walked outside, letting the warm Arizona wind sweep across my face. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction, glowing gold under the late afternoon sun. It was strange to think that a little over a year ago, I had fallen unconscious not far from here, a fugitive from my own life. I had been afraid, lost, nameless by choice, hunted by the man who once claimed to love me. And yet the desert had given me the one thing money never had: freedom. Caleb joined me outside, wiping his hands on a rag. "You thinking again?" he asked. "Always," I said, with a small smile. He stepped closer, his presence warm and grounding. "You ever miss New York?" "Sometimes," I admitted. The noise, the skyline, my old office, the version of myself I thought I was supposed to be. He nodded. "Do you regret choosing this?" I turned to face him fully. Choosing this saved me. Choosing you saved me. I spent years living in a world built for me but not designed with me in mind. Here, I get to build something back. His expression softened into something deeper. "You rebuilt me too, you know." Heat rose behind my eyes. "Caleb, I mean it," he said. "When you left that note on my workbench when you walked out of my life, I thought it meant you were choosing the world you came from. And when I saw you again at that ceremony, it felt like the world was giving me a second chance I had no right to ask for." I swallowed hard. "You always had the right. You just didn't believe it." He took my hand, then rough fingers lacing gently with mine. "I believe it now." We stood together as the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of copper and rose. Inside, the sound of laughter echoed as people cleaned up their stations. The little girl ran across the lot holding up her sketch triumphantly. "Ms. Marina, look. I finished it." I knelt to examine her drawing. "It's perfect." She pointed at the building behind us. "Is this place going to stay forever?" I looked at Caleb, then back at her. "As long as people need a place to learn and a place to belong." She nodded solemnly, as if sealing a pact. When she ran off again, Caleb wrapped an arm around my waist. "We built something good," he said, "something better than what either of us had before." I rested my head against his shoulder. "We built more than a garage," I whispered. "We built a life." The desert wind carried the scent of possibility. The laughter inside grew louder, and as the last light of day faded, I realized that for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was meant to be. I had escaped a marriage meant to trap me. I had survived betrayal fire and the kind of fear money cannot shield you from. And in the ashes of everything I left behind, I found a man who taught me freedom and a community that taught me purpose. It was not a fairy tale ending. It was something better, something real, something we built with our own hands, steel and silk, strength and softness, him and me. The story you just lived through with me is more than a tale of escape loss fire and unexpected love. It is a reminder that life has a way of breaking us open just so something stronger can grow in the empty spaces. Maybe you saw a piece of yourself in my fear when I ran into the desert. Maybe you felt the weight of every moment I thought I would never be believed, never be safe, never be seen. Or maybe you found hope in the way an ordinary man with grease on his hands and kindness in his eyes stepped into my storm without asking for anything in return. Stories like this linger with us because they echo the truth of our own lives. We have all survived something. We have all lost pieces of ourselves along the way. And somewhere in the quiet corners of our memories, we have all known a Caleb or wished we had. Someone who held steady when the world was shaking. Someone who offered a kind of care that did not demand repayment. Someone whose presence felt like breathing again after being underwater too long. If this story touched you, if it stirred something in your chest or made you pause even for a moment, then I want to invite you to stay with us. Our channel is more than a place for stories. It is a place for second chances, for the soft power of resilience, for the belief that even the most broken roads can lead to unexpected grace. Every story here is crafted to take you somewhere familiar, yet new. Somewhere that reminds you that no matter your age or your past, your heart still knows how to feel deeply. And there is beauty in that. There is strength in that. The world moves faster than it used to, and sometimes it feels easier to turn away from the hard parts, to shut down, to go quiet. But stories give us a way back to ourselves. They help us remember why love still matters, why courage still matters, why small acts of kindness can change the course of a life. So if you found even a flicker of truth in my journey, I hope you will join us here. Subscribe, stay, come back for the next chapter. Let us keep walking together through tales of redemption, hope, heartbreak, and healing. Let us keep choosing the kind of stories that make us feel alive again. Because maybe you did not run through a desert at midnight. Maybe you never had to expose a lie or testify to save someone you love. But you have faced storms. You have carried burdens no one else could see. You have stood at the edge of something painful and wondered whether you would make it to the other side. And that means you already understand the heart of every story we tell. This channel is your place to breathe, to remember to feel a little less alone in a world that moves too quickly. Stay with us. There are more journeys waiting, more souls to meet, more moments that will lift your heart and tighten your throat and remind you that even after everything falls apart, life still finds a way to hand you something beautiful, like a garage rebuilt from ashes, like a second chance you never expected, like love that arrives when you finally stop running. And if you are ready, truly ready, then our next story begins the moment you click subscribe. Are you ready to keep going?